Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, December 6th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the House of Representatives elections and the 2026 midterm elections. Hi everyone, I apologize if my audio sounds a little bit weird. I'm down in the state of Florida right now for a very quick vacation down in Fort Myers, and unfortunately I am in a house with 10 other people, so I am recording where I can. I'm in a room, but the audio sounds a little bit different than what I'm normally used to. But today we are talking about a set of elections and shifts in ratings on the new Inside Elections map here that gives Democrats a shift in 16 different districts in the direction of the Democratic Party in one fell swoop following the Tennessee special election that took place this past Tuesday in Tennessee's 7th congressional district, an election that Democrats came up 9 points short in, which you might be thinking, okay, if Democrats lost this race by 9 points, why is it that suddenly the races are shifting from right to left? Well, it does come down to the fact that Tennessee's 7th district voted for Donald Trump by 22 percentage points in the last election. This time around, Matt Van Epps, the Republican nominee, won by roughly 9 points. Not at all a margin that Republicans should be proud about or impressed by. This is a district that would have been never looked at twice in any other type of election, presidential, midterm, special, unless Donald Trump was president and unless the circumstances surrounding the special elections leading into this one had shown us exactly what we've seen so far, which is that Democrats have had a massive overperformance. And as it comes down to some of these more solid Trump districts, it's not immune to it either. And so Inside Elections does oftentimes predict elections, and the point here that they are trying to do is that really show exactly what's at stake for both sides of the aisle right now, with Democrats where they currently have them at 185 solid seats and Republicans at 190. Now, it reminds me a lot of the 2018 prediction map that they put out. Republicans had about 160 solid seats. Democrats had about 190, so a little bit more in favor of the Democratic Party at that point. But looking at the number of seats in play, you'll find that this time around, despite the Republican Party's massive redistricting efforts and shifting from state to state, it really isn't changing the ultimate composition of what the low end is for the Democratic Party, and really looking at it from the Republican side, a lot of these districts that are now toss-ups or tilt for the Democratic Party could have very well been districts that Republicans could have counted on pretty solidly in other races and in other circumstances on the national environment, and pretty much none of these ratings show any type of improvement for the Republican Party. Now, the DCCC put out this memo talking about the shift on 16 different House races in favor of the Democratic Party. But when we look at these ones on an individual basis, it will be quite interesting in understanding exactly what we're seeing. Some of these districts that have long been very solid for the Republican Party are now finding themselves on the edge of being districts that Democrats could, in fact, flip in the next cycle. Districts in California, districts in Michigan, districts in Nebraska, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and I think this Tennessee 5th one is in a direct response to what we're seeing in Tennessee's 7th, given that that district in particular, not the 5th, not the 7th, is one that Democrats might be targeting in the next House cycle. Now, looking at the shift map here for the Democratic Party, what they're working with already is a number of these districts that are moving back over into the Democratic column. Districts like Michigan's 8th that at periods of time were seen as maybe being up in the air, now no longer being as much up in the air. Democrats are expected to win that seat as well. Some of these other districts here that we see in Nevada or in Ohio or in Minnesota are moving over in favor of the Democratic Party, even in some cases, as these districts stand to be open races. And just 4 years ago in the last midterm cycle, districts like Minnesota 2nd were decided by 5 points, but now are solidly expected to be quite strong for the Democratic Party. And I think it speaks to a broader shift we've been seeing in election analysis and understanding what Republicans can expect to see in the 26 midterms, and Democrats too, obviously, which is largely going to be a defeat for the Republicans in the next midterm cycle. Tennessee's 7th district, if applied to the national map, would usher in a massive overperformance for the Democratic Party relative to expectations, but even just looking at it too, again, this would be the most substantial Democratic majority they've seen in a while. The map here on your screen right now would be what Democrats would win on the national level, taking the 2024 elections and swinging it in favor of the Democrats by as much as the state of Tennessee did as well. And special elections, as much as they are not perfect indicators of what is to come, just as they were in 2018, can be great indicators of what might come. In 2017 and 2018, in the lead up to the elections like these, where Democrats were expected to be competitive in many of these seats, The big thing here is that Democrats won, were defending less territory. That explains why there's less seats in play, but also the special elections were great indicators that 2018 would be quite a bad year for the GOP, that Democrats would be in a position where they could really bring it home in a number of districts that had never been seen as competitive before. And again, they weren't perfect examples, but I think one that comes to mind, at least for me personally, is Georgia's 6th district, a district that in 2016 went very solidly to Tom Price, who went on to serve in Donald Trump's administration. This gerrymander was exceptional for the GOP. They really did not have to worry about much shaving off. The closest Republican seat, I think, might have been Georgia's 7th, which was won by the Republicans by 21 percentage points. But fast forward, 6 months later, Georgia's 6th district has a special election. And although Democrats come up short in the special election, whatever happened to this guy, John Ossoff, who ended up, losing to Karen Handel by about a few percentage points, the point wasn't that Democrats lost. It was the margin at which they lost by. Because in 2016, that same district that went to Tom Price by 23.4 ended up going to the Republicans by roughly 3. A year and a half later, when the real election came around, not only did Georgia's 6th district go to the Democrats, Georgia's 7th narrowed down to being one that was decided by 0.15%. And 2 years later, not only did that district go to the Democrats, Georgia's 6th ended up going to the Democrats by nearly 10 points. And it was indicative of what was to come. The special election foretold the prophecy. The Democrats would not only be winning this district, but with it, the House majority. A lot of the special elections we saw did not end up with those districts in particular being that solid for the Democrats in the next cycle, like Georgia 6. That's a unique example. But great examples can be found in districts like this one, where you have, Mick Mulvaney, who was in South Carolina's 5th district. A special election took place, and the race was decided by 4. Instead of in 2016, when the Republicans won it by 21 points, it narrowed up significantly and would foretell in 2018 Democrats flipping a district in South Carolina with Cal Cunningham defeating Katie Arrington in South Carolina's 1st. Or another great example is in the state of Kansas, where the 4th district that went to Mike Pompeo by 31.1 in a special election just a year later, less than that in April, ended up going to Ron Estes by roughly 6 points. Now, it did not mean that Democrats were going to win it in the next midterm election. They ended up losing it by roughly 19 points. But they were shaving off the margin compared to 2016 by roughly 12 points, nearly exactly what the national shift looked like from 2016 to 2018 in terms of the national popular vote. And although it did not foretell this district in particular being all that competitive, the neighboring Kansas 2nd went from being a district won by Republicans by 28 to being only won by 0.85%. And across the country, Democrats saw these special elections, rightfully so, as moral victories, because in a lot of these races, for instance, in New York, there was not a single district that was won by more than 15 points for the Republican Party. It was all across the board here that the 2018 midterms were quite a strong year for the Democratic Party, and the special elections are really what honed it in. And had Democrats done 5 points better on the national level relative to what they did in 2018, they would have won 260 seats in the House of Representatives. And as much as Republicans were scrambling to figure out what exactly could have predicted such a massive defeat from 2016 to 2018, Democrats were at their second lowest point in the 21st century after the 2016 presidential election. Fast forward 2 years later, they're suddenly at their second highest. Well, the answer can largely be found in the special elections that predicted this would come to pass. The same exact thing that we are now seeing informing those decisions from groups like Inside Elections that realize and read the writing on the wall in the way that Republicans and Democrats are too, that Tennessee's 7th district, amongst the many others we've seen so far, tell us exactly what we've known for months now, which is that 2026 will not be great for the GOP by really any metric. And looking at what we've seen so far, example after example has told us what we've needed to understand, which is that Democrats are going to win in 2026 and probably by a pretty significant amount. And, looking at what comes in elections like these, 2026 will likely have some interesting elections. There's going to be some that take place on Tuesday, this December 9th. Nothing of the congressional level, but something certainly of interest. I think there's a race out in Texas and the Miami mayoral race, which we'll talk about a little bit later down the line. But the point is that if Republicans are looking for an answer, if they're looking for, what is telling them why these things are happening, they can look no further than the elections that have actually taken place. As much as Republicans can write off The approval rating of the president being at one of its lowest points we've seen in a tremendously long time, rivaling that of even the lowest points of Donald Trump's first term, even after January 6th. Or the generic ballot, improving and improving and improving for the Democratic Party on the national level where it was at the beginning of the administration, with Democrats being down roughly 5 on the national average. Today, Democrats are up by 4. That's a 9-point swing. A lot of it has to do with the fact that their president is unpopular, their candidates are unpopular, their leadership in Congress is unpopular. It is every direction you look. The Republican Party cannot catch a break. Whether a special election that they win by single digits, despite winning it by over 20 just a year ago, whether it's other elections in Arizona and Virginia that are seeing massive shifts in favor of the Democratic Party, these results are tremendously indicative of what will come in the 2026 midterms, and Republicans should be rightfully scared about where it stands today. Because as groups like those at Inside Elections and the Cook Political Report and Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball and all of these different groups pick up the races as they come and pick up on what is happening in many of these states, pick up what is happening in many of these districts. On the Senate side too, I mean, it is across the board. A universal pushback against the president, a universal pushback against the GOP, a universal pushback against the status quo. With a Republican-controlled Supreme Court, with a Republican White House, with a Republican-controlled House, with a Republican-controlled Senate, voters are angry. And the only real way to express that discontent, to express that anger and frustration in a meaningful and impactful way is through electoral politics. And as it stands right now, it is the Democrats who are winning that battle, whether on the moral front in narrowing down races 15 to 20 points closer than what they should be, whether it's on the real front of winning elections like those in Iowa and Pennsylvania and state Senate races and changing composition, winning Virginia and New Jersey by double digits when all the naysayers said it wouldn't be possible, cracking supermajorities in Mississippi, winning Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania, flipping statewide races in Georgia by 25 points. These things matter. And they all point in one direction, and it's left. And it's that Democrats are going to be improving quite significantly between now and 2026. And as more and more of these ratings are announced, as more and more of these changes are shown, it really comes to show exactly what we've known for a while, and is putting it in meaningful form that can really warn Republicans roughly a year in advance. The only real question is, do they adapt? Do they improvise? Do they get around to it, to actually adjusting their strategy for 2026? Chances are, looking at this present-day GOP, the answer, it's slim to none in terms of chances that Republicans actually make any improvements between now and next November. But that's great news for the Democratic Party and pretty terrible news for the GOP at large. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.